My name's Brian Perry. Thank y'all for joining me. I'm the Vice President of Sales with Direct Care Innovations. We're a workforce management software solution. We're founded in Phoenix, Arizona, but we're currently in 30 states throughout the country. Little quick anecdote about our CEO. He actually started out life in his teens as a direct support professional. So working at a provider agency, providing service to some individuals that needed help. From there, he worked his way up after college through that same organization till eventually becoming CEO of that agency. So that agency's in 5 states, serves about 5,000 individuals a month. And he was set out to design DCI because of his own issues and pain points of not being able to find software out there that really took the burden off of the individuals, off of the caregivers, and off of his supervisory staff so that they could get back to the world of caregiving. So that's kind of where we come from and where we start. For today, we're going to do a little quick intro on who we are, who's DCI, what is EVV and why it matters. How, really you need to look at for electronic visit verification, choice and freedom, because that's what we really want to talk about and how we can facilitate that. What types of EVV toolkit you should be looking for in your software. And then, of course, spend quite a bit of time on best practices that we've found out there and what we've seen. As I said, DCI's in 30 states. We have about 250,000 people logging into the app a month doing electronic visit verification punches. And then we'll do a quick demonstration on what it looks like in DCI and then open it up to Q&A and kind of a roundtable discussion. I have a total of about 30 to 40 minutes of presentation. Leave us plenty of time to chat. Any questions before I get started? Okay. I'm going to be weird with my hands, I feel like. That's okay. So I always like to take a few minutes and talk about our team because that's really important. I told you about our CEO and how he comes from the industry, but also about 80% of our staff worked in the provider industry in some form or fashion. Our COO, Mindy Mitchell, actually spent 19 years, worked up to a VP level at a multi-state agency before coming over to DCI. Myself, I'm Brian Perry. I've got 9 years of healthcare IT experience, managing sales teams as well as large complex implementations and implementation teams. One of our other innovation associates who's normally with me on these things, but she unfortunately had a procedure last week, has 17 years of industry experience, worked in both the caregiving side as well as at the MCOs. So I feel like our whole organization brings a lot of value and knowledge to the industry. Our mission, vision, and value are really important to us. We spend a lot of time thinking about this and developing it. And with most of us coming from that provider side, we really feel passionate about what we do and how we can help provider agencies. And so, of course, our goal is to become your trusted technology partner. I'm sure at this point everybody knows what EVV is, but I always like to take just a few minutes to chat about it just so that we understand and we're all on the same level. The Cures Act was brought into legislation in 2016. It was supposed to go live everywhere in 2019, and we've seen across the country there's been a slower rollout. Seems like about 20 states are live right now. The rest are in some form or fashion of going live with EVV. With EVV, there's 6 things that you have to have. So you have to have the type of service that's performed, identify the individual that's receiving that service, what the date of service is, the location of service delivery, the individual that is providing the service or the caregiver, and then the time that it starts and that it stops. And so those are the 6 factors that we have to capture whenever you're doing any type of electronic visit verification. And the key here is all that has to happen in real time. So, of course, that's the big thing. There's no more paper time cards unless we have a way around that. Why does EVV matter? And the big thing here is when it's done correctly, an EVV system should be a valuable tool that ensures your clients are getting all the services that they're supposed to receive and that they're entitled to. So it's ensuring that there's no fraud committed, that they're receiving everything that authorization permits them to. And again, it helps prevent that Medicaid fraud. I talked about this briefly early on, but the other thing too is to ensure that your EVV toolkit, whatever solution you have, has enough options to provide choice and freedom. And what I mean by that is that every individual has unique needs, that can change throughout the day even. So it's not necessarily that one specific electronic visit verification method is good for that individual throughout a full shift. And so you need to have multiple options, not just capturing a signature, not just, a PIN or password. What happens if someone has dexterity issues? They're going to struggle with signatures and with pins and passwords, right? So we have to have other ways, facial recognition, voice, and that can change throughout the day. If you're the person receiving services is taking a nap when the caregiver's clocking out, do we want to go wake them up to get their signature? I mean, that's not fair. And so you want to have ways that you can capture this information and that it's effective and efficient. With DCI, we have more options than anyone else out there. So we have client facial recognition, where we're going to take a picture of the individual receiving service. This is awesome for those folks that do have dexterity issues because it gets them involved in their service. We have voice recognition, where we ask them to say a phrase. We have a client signature, where we're going to capture a signature with a finger or a stylus pen. A client PIN or password, where they're going to enter their PIN or password into the system. A real-time fob entry, where we use a little fob token that's left with that client, lives in their home, and that's tied to them, so you can do that in real time. This is great for services that maybe a parent or guardian aren't available at all times to sign off or to capture. You can have that fob there that's available. Voice and facial recognition are also great for that. And then we have what's called real-time client or guardian portal sign-off. Services happen in real time. The caregiver would choose portal sign-off. The client or guardian can go in after the fact and sign off and say, yes, services were rendered there, but I wasn't available to sign at that very moment. For the mobile web, that's where the guardians or their clients can go sign off in the portal. And then if you do have site-based services, we do have ability to lock down IPs and things like that. Those were our high-tech solutions that are all available in our mobile app. On the low-tech side, because not everybody has a smartphone, not everyone has cell service or internet at their home, you also have to have other options. And so one of those is phone EVV. So phone EVV is great. Call up an 800 number, go through a system of phone prompts. At the end, you hang up, do it again at clock out, and we capture all that relevant data for phone. And then the last, our lowest tech, is our fob. It's a small fob token, same as in our high-tech solution, but this is for those individuals that don't have cell phone, don't have internet or the ability to capture that information. And we're basically going back to a paper time card where you're writing down clock in, clock out services in the fob token at the time of clock in and the time of clock out. When you do that, you're then capturing that in real time, and then that caregiver, once they get back to either cell range or back to somewhere where they can enter this onto a computer, would log in and enter these times. So now that we've talked about all these different ways for EVV to happen, how we can capture that information, what are some of the best practices? And the first is it's important to have an EVV system that's not a disparate system, something that works within the workflow of the provider agency. If it's a disparate system, it becomes more work for the caregiver, for the individual receiving service, and your staff. So it's adding burden to everyone around. And in adding that burden, it adds frustration and adds another layer of complexity. The regulatory burden should be on the providers and not those individuals receiving service. So we need to make it for the individuals as simple and easy for them as possible. Facial recognition, get them involved in their care. Hey, I'm here to clock in, I need to take your picture. Something like that, something that's fun and easy, but that's not adding a bunch of burden. The system that you choose should be easy to use, should be secure, and make sure that all the proper security certifications are in place. Something that has SOC 2 certifications, FedRAMP certified, HIPAA compliant, of course. These things we take for granted nowadays, it seems, but these are real important pieces. Whoever you choose needs to have experience implementing Medicaid systems in complex environments. Because if I've worked with one Medicaid service provider, I've worked with exactly one Medicaid service provider. Everyone does something different. Everyone has their own unique ways of doing things. So that's really, important. I've got a couple more of these. So EVV best practices, make sure that you have easy to read quick start documents for your staff. I can tell you on Go Live, if we have an agency that's not as prepared as they should be, our support department goes off the hook because they didn't have quick and easy guides to use. They didn't have little one-sheets or emails that were sent out that says, hey, here's how you do it. Along those same things, short self-help videos and how-tos. So you should have those ready, showing a little recording of clocking in and clocking out. It may, after, us as administrators or the people on the side that have set this whole system up, we know it like the back of our hand. So we don't even think about how it is to clock in. But if you think about folks that maybe have some issues with technology, that are a little technologically challenged, we've all experienced that one caregiver that is, then we want easy ways for them to find this information, to understand how to clock in. Along those same lines of those self-help guides, those videos, understanding that you have to do the education for both your members as well as your caregivers, so that you can have a system that's easy for them to use, that's available in multiple languages, because not everyone speaks English as their first language. So you need to have a system that has multiple languages available in the app and in the portal, so that they can see that. Your help documentation, your how-to videos need to be in multiple languages of all those individuals that you're supporting and those caregivers. Getting started early and often. We see this too often where people say, our go-live date is December 1st. We're going to train our caregivers November 29th. Well, guess what? You've given them 2 days, right? So you want to make sure that you have plenty of time for your caregivers, for their those folks that they're supporting, to get familiar with the system, to learn it, and to put it into their workflow, because it's going to be a challenge throwing something else in. Most people are used to going in and writing down their time on a piece of paper, right? And so they go in, or maybe it's a simple clock in and clock out. So you want to have something that they're built into their workflow, that you start getting them used to, because you're not going to have 100% or 80% compliance right away. So if you can start this 3 or 4 months ahead of time, awesome. Then you have that much better chances of success and of hitting your metrics that you're looking for when you do go live. Finally, is to have reasonable expectations. EVV is not a perfect system. No one out there is. Software is written by folks, so every software has its issues no matter what you choose. DCI, I like to think, is pretty good, but everybody has issues. Anyone that says they don't, they're not telling the truth. So ensure that with your EVV system, you're ready for what happens next. There's going to be issues that come up, that crop up, not just at go live, but in the future. Stuff's going to happen. Folks, there's going to be an upgrade to an app that someone can't do. They're going to need to call in and get help. So be prepared, be nimble, and understand that you can't expect perfection all the time. And so if you can understand that, then that's awesome. One thing that a lot of states have done and that we've implemented are reason codes. So what's the reason why you couldn't do it in real time? And so you can start seeing and tracking patterns, right? If someone just can never figure it out, or doesn't have service, or whatever the case may be, you can have reason codes that they're capturing when they aren't doing EVV in real time. So when they're giving you after the fact. So you can use those reason codes to start saying, what can we do as an agency to help our folks? Do we need to switch some of these folks to a fob or to telephony? Or maybe ensure that offline mode is set up so that if they don't have service, you can do that. So hand in hand with EVV is something else I like to talk about, is training and compliance tracking. Because with all of this electronic visit verification, we need to ensure that all of our caregivers are compliant and trained on everything that they need to be, not just EVV. And so you should also have a system that works hand in hand with that. I'm going to talk about DCI for a few minutes, and then we're going to open it up to some Q&A. So at DCI, we took a holistic approach to the workforce management solution. So we have modules that do all of basically your back office. So we start at the bottom with authorization management. You all receive authorizations. We want to start there and manage those authorizations, because that's what drives everything in this world. If we don't have an authorization, we shouldn't be providing service. And without that authorization, we don't know how much time we're providing, all that kind of fun stuff. So we have that authorization management. We do authorization management in real time. So as soon as someone clocks in and then clocks out for a shift, we deduct that from the authorization. So you can always, at the end of a shift, look and see how much time's remaining in that auth. Second is that training and compliance that I mentioned. We're doing that proactive training and compliance tracking within the system so that you can make sure that all of your caregivers are qualified and compliant before they show up to work. If something falls, they have an expired certification that they're no longer certified to work in a program, we can block them from clocking that time. And so if they can't clock in for that shift, then, that's good. We don't have folks that aren't certified to work working shifts. And with that, just a quick caveat, for training and compliance, we're sending notifications out well ahead. So you set up the timeline. So for example, CPR. I always like to use that as an example because CPR and first aid, it expires every couple of years. You need to go register for a class, sign up, take it in person, get your certificate, all that fun stuff. And so you probably want to send that out 3 months ahead of time before it expires. So they get a 3-month notification that says, hey, your CPR is coming up. And then along with that, we can send out weekly reminders. And so you can also hit them every week. So by the time it gets to the point that it's expired, you've now touched them, 10, 12 times. And on top of that, your supervisors in your training department can be picking up the phone and running reports and seeing this and calling them. And so there's not really any excuse other than someone just didn't do what they were supposed to. Our next piece is our scheduling module. So we have scheduling for both, home and community-based services so that you can schedule your employees on who they're supposed to work with and when, because we understand you're probably sharing staff among multiple individuals. So your employees know exactly when they need to be, at what location, when and where. It's also right on their phone and their mobile app. So they've now always have their schedule in their pocket. So that's another great piece. We also have scheduling for your residential, your day programs, things like that. Those have a lot of really neat logic built into them that you can do things like keeping track of ratios and all that kind of fun stuff and keeping your staffing budget really in control. Next is, of course, topic of today, EVV time entry and transportation tracking. When we're doing that electronic visit verification, we're also capturing all the information you need for billing, for your payroll, as well as staying compliant with EVV, and we even have transportation tracking because we understand that's one of the biggest areas of fraud in Medicaid billing. Our client rating system is a system that allows you to rate your one-to-one services after they happen. It sends an email out to the individual that received service. They can then rate it. If you've ever taken an Uber or Lyft, it's just that simple. 1 to 5 stars, a little note. This is great for quality surveys as well as something to look at for employee review time. The employees are blind to it. Only your supervisors and administrative staff can see it. And finally, our business rules and approvals. This is probably the most powerful part of DCI because we have a system of business rules and approvals that allow for automated approval of time and billing entries. So if it checks off all the boxes that you set up in the system, we can auto approve that and get it sent on to payroll and billing. When all these work together, you get those payroll and billing files, you get proactive alerts and notifications that are all secure, and you get quality of care analytics. So DCI was really built to help you pull all these things together to reduce your staff's time. And that's our big value add, is we're going to be able to take and shrink down the amount of time your staff is spending looking at EVV verifications, looking at payroll, looking at billing entries, because we're doing all the checks in the back end to ensure everything is compliant, everything's where it needs to be. We have proactive alerts and notifications within the system, a secure messaging portal so that your caregivers can message back and forth with their supervisors and with the clients. We also send external notifications outside of the system. So we understand your caregivers may not be logged into DCI all day, every day. They're probably not. They're probably not working all day, every day. They have different hours. So we send notifications outside of DCI to let folks know that they have a message. And these notifications can be automated or they can be user generated. And so automated messages are things like for training, for if a punch was rejected because it fell outside of the authorization. Manual created messages that a supervisor wants to let an employee know. All that goes into DCI, and then we send out SMS text or emails to let folks know that they have a message in DCI. So again, their phone's always in their pocket. That text bings. We know most of our caregivers probably know how to use text, and so it just gives them a link. Click here, you have a new message, and you customize what you want those external messages and those internal messages to look like. I'm going to do just a real quick mobile app demonstration just to show you what it looks like. And we're not going to spend a ton of time here. because we've all got better things to do, right? If y'all want to see an in-depth demonstration, I'm more than happy to do it. It'll take just a moment to log in. I'm going to use my demo person, Maurice, the caregiver. Let me type in Maurice a super secret password. And as soon as I log in, you're going to see 3 big bars at the top. We do these because that's where we're going to do our action. So we're going to clock in. I get a list of the clients that I'm authorized to work with. So it's kind of small on the screen, but our dev team are big Star Wars fans, so we can see the 2 clients that I'm authorized to work with here is Chewbacca and Jabba the Hutt. So I pick which client I'm going to work with. We're going to say Chewie for today. And as soon as I choose Chewie, I click my finger off of it, you'll see it automatically defaulted our service in our cost center. The reason it did that is because I only work with Chewie with 1 service. If I had multiple services, same thing. All the services that I'm authorized to work with that individual show up in this list, and I pick what service I'm working at this shift. And then, of course, cost center is defaulted based on those 2 selections. Just hit confirm, and now here's those list of EVV options. So you as an agency can choose as few or as many of these as you want. I have them all turned on for demo purposes, but if you decided you didn't want to use voice or portal sign-off, it just wouldn't show for this. So we're going to use a couple of different ones. I'll do a picture on the beginning, and I'm going to say, hey, Chewie, smile for your picture. And I'll flip it around and not make any of you suffer through. Take a picture. As soon as I snap that picture and I hit OK, it uploads into the business cloud. So we're not storing anything on the camera roll. We're not storing anything on a device, with the exception of if you're using offline mode. If you use our offline mode, it's stored on the device within the mobile app just until it's back in cell phone service or Wi-Fi range. But we're not putting anything in the camera roll. We aren't storing pictures or files or things like that. So at this point, I'm clocked in. I can just simply close my phone, put it in my pocket, go on about my day. If I want to do anything else, if I want to take notes, if I want to do client transportation, I have a little blue button at the bottom down there that I can do add a note, I can add an attachment, or I can do any of my goal tracking. We have lightweight goal and task tracking here. Notes can be done as free text notes where I'm typing them in, or they can be transcribed. So you can do voice to text. So that's really handy. Attachments on a mobile device are just using the camera. So I'm just taking a picture of something as an attachment. I think we leaned on the cord a little hard there. See if it comes back on for us. Just to round out there, with the attachments, so if Chewbacca fell and scraped his knee and I wanted to take a picture for an incident report for prosperity's sake, I could do that as an attachment. If I had a paper incident report and I wanted to snap a picture of it, I could do that as well. Next, if I haven't worked with Chewie in a while and I want to see client details, that's that big blue button in the middle of the screen. So I can click on that. It pulls up Chewie's info. I'll see a picture of Chewbacca here. So we can see there's Chewie. There's a little bit of Chewie's demo with his phone number. Then I can see any prior entries, and I can even review his plan of care if I want. But we're not going through all that today. We're going to go ahead and clock out. I'm at the end of my shift. I'm ready to clock out. And maybe I'm going to have Chewie sign the tablet. So we'll do e-signature, sign it with a pen or with a finger or stylus pen. So I say, hey, Chewie, I need your signature. Hand my device over. Chewie signs, hits OK. And now it asks me for any notes for this shift. So what do I want to put? I can start typing. I can, again, do voice to text. Here I can record voice to text. Just that quickly, it types out my sentence for me. We can have canned statements. So anything that you want to capture that can be a small statement, it can be different types of services. And then we're going to go ahead and clock out. I always like to joke with folks when they say, you know, these apps are too slow, it takes too long to clock in. And I've actually challenged some folks that want to say that and say, tell you what, get your time card, your paper time card out, and when you start writing, I'll start clocking in. And I can get all the way through the clock in process quicker than you can write out the date, the time, and what service you're doing. It takes me about, if I'm doing it not talking to all of you, which I really like talking, it usually takes me about 10 to 12 seconds. So I can see what happened on this punch. So we worked with Chewbacca. It was an hourly EVV service. We clocked in at 2:22. We clocked out at 2:24. And I clocked in with a picture and clocked out with a signature. I hit home. And now we're back We can see my little overtime gauge at the bottom moved up a little bit because I now have some time. I could do other entries. We even have a news post at the bottom if you have agency-wide information that you want to disperse out. I think of this as the old bulletin board in the office, right? You can get that information out. So that's just a quick and easy look at our mobile app. As I said, I don't want to spend the whole time on that. So some final thoughts on this is EVV is a challenge for many agencies. Without the right software, it can be even harder. And so it's really important to take your time vetting your software, understanding what you get, and making sure it fits your agency's needs and wants. Your EVV solution should offer many different options for that verification like we talked about. Folks have different needs, and those needs can change throughout the day. And so not everyone can sign with their finger, not everyone can use their voice to talk to the system, not everyone wants to have their picture taken. Maybe 90% of the time they love facial recognition and getting their picture taken. There are days they're not going to want that to happen. So options are great here, and it just enables that individual and brings them into their care. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed chatting about DCI and EVV best practices.